Hello, my lovely audience. So, where we last left off was Deku let's see, Phantom Stranger Deku was doing his dutiful good and basically preventing an evil Deku from completely destroying the world. So, now for him to do some bad. And by bad, I mean some bad. Anyways, what he ends up doing next is something horrible. And you'll see in a second. Basically, there is a universe where he finds one where Bakugo, in an oddly enough way, is female. And Deku is, married to her in one universe. But the problem with this was the fact in this universe, one day a set of villains go after Bakugo. And Bakugo in this universe would have One for All and would be a lot nicer with Deku, but be a whole lot different when around, other people. And what would end up happening here is this. Deku is going to be, how do I put this? The people break into the house and immediately he is killed. Yeah. He's brutally massacred and ripped apart to shreds, leaving only his head intact. Yeah. Gruesome, right? So, what ends up happening in this world is, to the best of his ability, he thinks that if he tries to stop the villains, that will prevent the problem. But as many times as he tries to stop them with, hitting one thing to have one thing happen and basically having a domino effect, it keeps happening and it keeps happening. And all he does is prevent the inevitable. And every single time, Bakugo gets mad and goes on a killing spree, killing everything in her path. And she destroys everything that goes on. So Deku decides to go to a universe, one that's very far and distant, one that I made a long time ago. And I want to say that he has gone and basically creates a quirk where he's able to permanently steal quirks. Permanently. We don't know if All for One you can steal them and then they're taken away forever, but basically he steals them without any backlash happening to him. And he calls it plunder. Basically what he does is he goes to this interesting universe and he, takes a certain ability that allows him to create diseases. So he goes to a bunch of other universes, ones where there's always a monstrous killing machine, takes DNA from every single one of them, and he goes to the universe where Bakugo goes on a killing spree every time her husband's dead. And what he ends up doing is he creates an interesting virus. One that you all see how volatile it is and how powerful it is and how it chemically changes the person. And what ends up happening here is this. Deku basically makes a meteorite, lumping together rock and forming it together, creating it enough size so it can actually be a devastating event. And what ends up happening here is he imbues the virus that he has created, this deadly viral virus that will break down immediately if it's not in a host. As in, once it goes out, sends it towards Japan, and it creates a huge epidemic so bad and massive that people are turning into monsters. And it hit Deku and Bakugo. He was worried at first about Bakugo, but he made sure that Bakugo would be immune in a way. And Deku would be the main target for this, so he can get stronger. And when he fast forwards to the main universe, he sees both Bakugo and Deku together fighting alongside of each other. But then he sees other universes where it's only Bakugo fighting and visiting a grave. It's only Deku fighting, and he visits a grave. And he worries and worries about how this might have affected the entire multiverse. And then he sees one where there's two graves and two mothers who basically watch over this. And then he goes ahead and visits these graves, every single one of them, leaving behind a rose. And then disappears and decides to go to other universes, seeing if there's any other that he needs to help. And he goes to one universe that's peaceful, doesn't have any heroes, doesn't have any villains. It's just a world full of normal people. There's no such thing as quirks, no such thing as superpowers, nothing like that of the sort. And instead, there's just a boy who gets to hang out with his friend. And that's it. And he enjoys watching these two grow. As he enjoys watching them, he decides to do something interesting. What would happen if he gave them powers? Made them the first generation of quirk bearers. So while they're sleeping, he gives them powers. Breaks off into many people, giving everyone that's in the main My Hero Academia universe that we know of have powers. And what ends up happening here? Chaos. Lots and lots of chaos. But Deku, through this all, would want to become a hero, and he becomes the first known hero in the world. And so does Bakugo and many others. They rise up to become heroes. And the Phantom Stranger immediately, he regrets his decision, but he was interested in how it all went down. So what does he do next? With how he's able to give powers and take away powers and create all these powers, he then goes forth. He goes forth to one world that's very interesting. And this world, well, it's a world without a Deku, without an Izuku Midoriya, but mainly because Inko and Hisashi never had a child. But Bakugo was born, and so was everyone else. But just Deku wasn't born. And there was a lot of different things that happened through this. And what ends up happening next was this. Deku, being the powerful one he is, Phantom Stranger being the powerful one he is, he decides to plant a seed. Goes to a plant. An old plant. One that he's sensed power and strength in. And he bestows upon this plant quirks. Many quirks. And he bestows upon it sentience, intelligence, life, and the ability to create new life and create power from oneself. And what does he do? He created, the green. If you don't know what the green is, I want you to watch Swamp Thing or read Swamp Thing's comics, and then you'll understand what the green is. What ends up happening next is this. Deku then goes forth, and after creating the green, he creates it in this small plant, and he tells it, while pricking his finger and having his blood go down on this plant, saying, create someone through my blood. Create new life through my blood, that it will go through my image that I have given to you. Create something of mine. with the power I have given you, create something of new life. Create something that will save this world from an inevitable danger. And what ends up happening here is this. The green does so. Creates new life. And then what ends up happening next is simple. Deku does one last thing. He goes to a world where there should be a hero. Someone who should stand up. When there's no heroes, there's only villains. He decides to set the balance. And he goes out and he starts taking down these villains. More villains than heroes. People are in fear of going out. Deku doesn't get All Might's no hero, he's a villain in this one. Every single person who becomes a hero becomes a villain. Quirks take over their minds and so on. Yes, we're doing this. And Deku takes down all these people with these insane quirks and all these ridiculous powerhouses. And immediately finds Deku basically being torn to shreds by some type of villain. And he bestows upon him a quirk that will be helpful. Regeneration. And what ends up happening next is he bestows upon him power, other power, self-evolution, and so forth. Then Deku leaves, leaving behind one quirk. Plunder and stockpile, as well as sanity, being able to keep his sanity, and as well as to pass on quirks. Now, what ends up happening next is simple. What does Deku do next? Goes to another universe. Another universe that is full of crime, full of evil, full of terrorism, full of horrors. And this one is destined for greatness, because one hero will rise from the ashes of this world, and he needs to have this one rise. So, he creates a group of gunmen and tells them to blow up these areas in the name of he uses a sort of brainwashing quirk that he creates, and forces a large group to go ahead and commit mass terrorism and murder, telling them to make certain bombs and have them explode, suicide vests. And they use children to blow them up. And they've been doing it for 10 years. So yeah, this group will be called Anti-Hero. Why not? We'll go with that. Anti-Hero Society. We'll go with that name. So, what ends up happening next? Well, Deku goes out again. He goes out to some more damage. He goes out and does some harm, but also some good. Goes to a world where the only people that get quirks are animals. And there's these dangerous animals running around causing mayhem. And humans have to hunt them. So what does he do? Creates a world, and basically a place for the humans to live and survive on. Atop of tall mountains and abundance of resources. Placing every human on this earth. And they're able to sustain themselves off the energy that these creatures give off below. So yeah. What does end up happening next? Simple. Deku goes out and he goes to another universe. One where Deku lives happily. And he's living happily with his mom and he's very happy. What ends up happening next is Deku, he is then, orphaned by, well, the stranger, dicing up his mother and leaving him with a false memory. And then having some circus people take him in and have them train him, become something he's not, so he may become strong enough to take down certain foes. So he can become the darkness, the night, fear itself, to become the Batman of that world. Then he goes out to do another one. And where he goes next, let's see, where shall he go next? Goes to another world. One where his mother dies, and she's already dead. He doesn't need to do anything. Where does he go? Goes to a world where Deku, living on the streets, and he creates an app. An app that is going to keep him sustainable, and connects it to worlds that are insane and remarkable. Connects it to the multiverse, having him being able to purchase anything almost like an Amazon, but for multiple worlds. And he connects it to Deku's phone. And immediately what ends up happening next is this. Deku goes and, well, he gets all this money. He gets all this wealth and this strength and this power to later become a hero through this app store. And what ends up happening next is simple. After doing all of this, Deku goes to a world full of fantasy and amazement. And he goes to a world where there's dragons and monsters and wizards and knights. And he finds a young Deku that is, well, wanting adventure. So he bestows upon him a power, energy manipulation, being able to shoot out electrical manipulation and power. And he allows him to get full reign of this, and even faking his death, making it look like that his master has fallen and died, for him to only find a new master, a person resembling All Might, the greatest wizard there is. And then he leaves that universe and bounces to another one. What does he go and see there? A world full of monsters. Monsters that inhabit this world and have destroyed the world. And that's only in the future. It's one of the mistakes he has made. And by mistakes, I mean alterations he has made. Through these alterations, he has made worlds where monsters reign over people, heroes reign over villains, villains reign over heroes, and so on. And he looks back on his life. Was all he did good, or was it evil? Was what he has done for the greater good, or for something else? So he starts looking deep in the world, and going back to a place that he once visited quite a lot, to meet the smartest Deku in the universe. And the known universe is out there. And he meets him and he talks to him. And he shares what he has done. That he has made some mistakes. And he doesn't know if he can fix them. And we all know who this Deku is. It's Sherlock. And he tells him, well, we all make mistakes. It's a part of being human. So what we choose to do next is what defines us. So, what do you choose to do, stranger? What is it that you choose to do that will define you next? And he just vanishes when he looks up. Phantom stranger vanished, leaving some money on the table for him to pay for his food. And then he goes off. And what ends up happening next is more fun than that. Deku goes off across other universes, bouncing between them as if he was there and then not there. He's basically walking along a hallway, then walking through a forest, then walking into a city, then walking into another place, walking to every single place and walking to seeing everything until he stops in front of a baby. Sees a baby that resembles him, a younger version of himself. Picks up the baby. And he sees what this child has, making a new quirk to allow him to see which of this baby, what does he have? And he realizes this isn't human. It is more different. Something called Gargarian. And he decides to do something. He decides to take this baby from this universe that's full of war and destruction, full of hell and despair and horror, and take him away from this universe, not knowing how powerful this baby is, and putting it on the doorstep of an Inko and Hisashi who are about to leave for their nice dinner out, hoping for later maybe to make new life. But then stumbling, opening the door and finding Izuku, a new baby, looked exactly like Izuku, has a baby, and well, yeah, you know where I'm going with this. Baby from another world going into, well, yes, this world. And Deku goes in the future of that world and sees that he's done so much good for this one, giving this one a new home, but goes back and sees the world he took it from. He left a mother crying, a war goddess crying, and a father who was very mysterious and unknown. One wearing an armor, powerful armor that looked infused with some kind of mystical energy. And seeing that he's taken away their child, decides to do some good. And he creates a quirk, one to duplicate the baby, the soul itself, and splitting it apart, but the remaining everything intact. This is one of the most powerful quirks, creating something of new life, but not of the same. Basically, can only be done once on one person, and as long as that child lives, the other shall live the same. And he gives the baby to the war goddess and the mysterious man in armor. And he goes off, walking again through different universes and through different times, different worlds and different places. Ones where people have tentacles and eyeballs, one where people are beastmen, one where there is a werewolf, one where there is a vampire, one where there is all these many places and all these many beautiful places to visit, seeing them all and crying as he sheds a tear to some death and some destruction and some life and some new things to see. Seeing a world where everyone is, well, happy, where some are frightened, some are scared, some are dead, some are all over. And he sees this world, then stumbles upon it. And after he's realizing this is the beginning. This is where it all started. He sees a boy walking down along a road with his friends, laughing, knowing full well what is about to await him. A life of hero work, a life of pain, a life of horror, much too much horror and despair. One who is strong, stronger than him, to pick up the will to actually fight instead of run away. He goes up to this boy and he gives him about 50 million yen, saying, "Go treat yourself, kid, and have a good night." And immediately he goes running off towards him. And when he turns the corner, he's gone. Phantom Stranger Deku immediately above him, watching him from afar, seeing him, seeing this world and seeing how it's beautiful and how it's so changeable and so amazing and perfect. He then decides to get up and start walking again to where he will go next, to the end, where he'll see the last episode and the last fall and last rise and last everything, where he walks a new path and walks in something that will define him, going towards other places, other times, other worlds, seeing that what he did caused another multiverse. And he goes over to see other worlds that he has created and seeing how far they have come. And yes, he then finds a place, one in a world that's beautiful, where it's on top of a hill, cabin. It's empty. Walks through it, feels how interesting it is. It's got history. And he decides to sit down and make this place his home, not realizing what is going around on the world. And he decides to shut his eyes for a while. Because for him, it's only been a day, but for everyone else, it's been, many lifetimes. So he decides to sit down and relax and sleep. And go to sleep to shut his eyes so he may wake up and continue his work. Not realizing that he is now bestowed upon powers of magic and great fortune. And yes, what ends up happening next is this. He sleeps and is given a full powerhouse set of abilities. Next time when he wakes up, he will never need to sleep again. He'll just need to keep doing his work. And that's when he decides to, just rest. So yes, have a good day and a good night, and peace out.